Forget Libya. Our next guest says the country we ought to be focused on is the gorilla of the Gulf, Saudi Arabia. So far, the Saudi regime has avoided the wave of revolt sweeping the Arab world. And yesterday, oil prices pulled back from $100 after it emerged that Saudi Arabia was in talks to fill any shortfall created by the rebellion in Libya. Clearly, Saudi stability is critical for the region and for global markets. But at what price? Let's welcome Saud Masud, CEO of SM Advisory Group and a former senior analyst with UBS in Dubai. Saud advises institutional investors on the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. You've lived in Riyadh for 5 years, as part of, obviously, a tour throughout the region. Tell me, you know the country so well. How long can Saudi Arabia avoid this wave of unrest?
Well, I think that's a loaded question. I think they can definitely buy time, and I think we've seen an example of the spending that was announced yesterday. But I think the fundamental issue is so much deeper than that. It's about the people. You look at the quality of life, and you look at the gaps, the human development gaps that exist in the region, including Saudi. They have to be addressed head on. And I think that's the core issue, because really Saudi is where the buck stops, in my opinion. You've got the largest economy, essentially, the largest equities market, oil producer, oil reserves, etc. So Saudi needs to set the trend.
How vulnerable is Saudi Arabia to the sectarian divide we see flaring in Bahrain next door?
Look, I think this is definitely an issue to be flagged. It's on the eastern province. That's where the
Sunnis
large concentration.
Versus Shiites.
Correct, yes. Exactly. But I think the market right now is betting that should be containable, and we'll see. I think the world is watching, and I think Saudi needs to really be able to squeeze away some time right now. And then sort of move forward with some reforms.
As you know, one of Saudi Arabia's crown princes, Prince Al Walid, has an op-ed in today's New York Times warning of more unrest throughout the Arab world unless governments, as he says it, adopt, quote, radically different policies. He talks about brittle, outmoded political systems, unemployed youth, marginalized women, poverty, power confined to a small circle, and one-party rule that pretty much describes Saudi Arabia in addition to a number of other countries. Is this a veiled warning to his own king?
Look, I think that's reality. And I think acknowledging that is step one in all of this. And I think if we look at the average age of the youth here, it's all about the young and the more enlightened, I guess, that are looking to seek a better life. And if you deliver that, I think you have the peace and calm and quiet, and you can have a win-win. It's not just about the top 5%, it's also the other 95%.
Saud, I want to pull out another quote from this op-ed by Prince Al Walid. He says, quote, Arab governments can no longer afford to take their populations for granted or to assume that they will remain static and subdued, nor can the soothing instruments of yesteryear, which were meant to appease, serve any longer as substitutes for meaningful reform. My question to you is this. Aren't the $36 billion of handouts that the king is making to Saudis right now nothing more than soothing instruments of yesteryear?
Absolutely, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that you can buy time. And that's
it, right? Just time.
And I think they understand that. I think what you need is a gradual, consistent increase in GDP per capita, and that should trickle down to the everyday person. It's not just about, a quick payout.
You advise institutional investors. What are you telling them to do?
Well, I think one of the things we've said is that we are secular bulls on this region, on the broader region, Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, because the trends are unignorable. What you have right now is such an event risk that is unprecedented that there's really no need to be chasing the tape, if you will. So I think you let this one play out, and I think the thing I would punctuate is Saudi needs to set the precedent. You're seeing a trend in this region, one regime after the other, facing political upheaval. If Saudi is able to break that trend, I think it sets a new tone, and I think we've got to wait for that. Again, going back to my point earlier, the buck stops at Saudi.
It certainly does. Saud, thanks so much for joining us. Saud Masud, the CEO of SM Advisory Group, here on the Inside Track, talking about the gorilla of the Gulf, Saudi Arabia.